This is Coda Radio, episode 211 for June 27th, 2016. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. This episode is brought to you by our two fine sponsors, DigitalOcean and Linux Academy. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week, like the captain in the center seat of his bridge, why, yes, it's Mr. Michael Dominic. Hello there, Mike!
The Ocha, hi.
Hello. Hey, I realize I've never used a Star Trek reference to introduce you, so I should probably write this wrong because after this week, I won't be here for 1 week. So that was my last chance before 1 week. Yeah, if all goes as planned, Crazy Noah says that he's going to do last in Grand Forks, North Dakota Sunday, which if you're not familiar with Grand Forks, North Dakota, it's like literally in the middle of nowhere. Then he's going to fly to Seattle to be here in time to do Coda Radio Monday.
I love it. In fact, you know what? He'll be able to help me set up my new Linux desktop.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That should be coming soon, huh?
Should be coming Friday, but, it's FedEx, so Thursday.
You just can't pass up a good deal. You can't pass up a good deal.
And my MacBook kernel panics like it's going out of style.
Really? I thought they don't do that. I thought that was a thing about those.
We've covered it on the show.
Yeah.
This has been happening for months. Sometimes we'll be in Xcode or Android Studio, more likely WebStorm and IntelliJ, though. And it says, you know what? I'm going to Brexit out of these processes.
Do you want to announce the drinking game, or do you just want people to figure it out as we go?
In celebration.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
Watching all of London and Wall Street cry, which it's alone enough reason to celebrate for me.
Yeah.
We're playing a drinking game today. Take a shot of, I said scotch because, if you're in the UK, you ain't going to be buying it tariff-free for much longer. Bam.
Jeez, you are going to get hate mail. People are upset about this.
As always, Alan at Jupiter Broadcasting.
Yes, of course. Send all feedback there.
Scotch is preferred.
I don't know if you can blame this first story on the Brexit, but
I blame it on the Brexit.
TechCrunch says you're full of it. The app boom is far from over. This is the best era for apps ever.
Do you know what the great thing about creative accounting is?
You can make anything look right.
You can make anything look good that's horrible. Business?
Yeah, that's very true. So TechCrunch says that there's a new wave of reporting focused on the post-app era. The app boom is over, etc., etc. They say this is Boulder Dash. They say the $100 billion market, it's a $100 billion market now, and let's just start with the facts. The real numbers are amazing. We are in an unprecedented era of growth when it comes to revenue from apps. Revenue is hard to manipulate because it ties back to financial filings by Google and Apple, and it needs to be audited. That's adorable. So they look at this and they say, if you take app download news as an example, and you look at all the new downloads are way up. As a software service guy, he says, let me tell you, this is an amazingly insightful decision by Apple for some of the recent changes they've made with the advertising and also with their recent 15% subscription price after a year onwards. He says with the new subscription model from Apple, some improvements from Google that are coming in, he says Google's being more generous than ever, that we are now in the mecca. It is the newer apps like Uber, Airbnb, and Snapchat are growing fast while there's still apps out there for room. The market is not saturated. The users are not saturated. Some established players like Facebook and others aren't going anywhere, but there's still plenty of grass for us to all chew on. What do you think, Mr. Dominic?
There's so much wrong with that analysis.
No, it's absolutely correct because the numbers are audited.
Okay. So that's hilarious. So we're Enrons for years.
Oh no!
Oh yeah, see, you gotta be a certain age to get that reference.
Here's what you do when you're Google. That's not making any money. You just put that under Alphabet.
Well, hang on. Let's break down his argument. So one, the numbers are audited. Okay, you're pretty great. Let's keep moving. Auditing means nothing. Accountants are almost always incentivized to lie for their clients.
Yeah, it's true too.
Especially when their clients are big names, by the way. They're not going to lie for the grocery store down the road, but they're definitely going to do it for Google.
Or Apple.
even if you don't believe that, which I can assure you is true, what is one figure he doesn't mention is what is the average revenue per app?
Oh yeah, right. I was gonna say the numbers you're. I mean, it's hard for me to guess with the numbers that you're kicking around because I actually think they're probably
Single digits.
devastatingly low.
They are single digits. I mean, it's not great, and it's one of those situations where people say, "Well, you just made a crappy app, right?"
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Let's correct. Want all of the Game of Wars and Candy Crushes and
Yeah.
big free to play games, and then what are the raw numbers after that? They're pathetic, right? I mean, it's to say the app boom is over, one, is hyperbole, and I understand why TechCrunch might be motivated to write a piece saying, well, that's nonsense. But to say that the economy is healthy for small or medium-sized businesses is kind of a joke. I mean, your average app developer is making money on consulting, right?
Yes.
For larger corporations.
Sure.
That is what we're doing. That's how you make money. We are not releasing, I mean, in the cases where we do release our own apps, they're not no one's getting hired because we released an app, right? They're not it's so rare, particularly he mentions the subscriptions, which are geared towards productivity applications.
Or enterprise too, but
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm assuming he's talking about the consumer app market, right? Not the B2B or not the IBM thing.
I don't know. When you say productivity, you could mean to-do lists, or you could mean Salesforce. Like productivity could be anything.
It could, but even Salesforce. I mean, I think that's a great example. Their app is not a primary revenue generator of any kind, right? Their app is another window into a service.
Great point.
Which is great, but I don't think anyone could argue that Salesforce is an app development company by any stripe, right?
Yeah, it is a function that they do to serve their overall business. Sort of right. Like there's a lot of that a lot of businesses do that with their apps.
When I think of app companies, I think of Panic. I think of the folks who make Sketch. I think of the people who make Fantastical, who are, go read the Panic blog about how they've suffered in the App Store economy.
What about Pocket Jelly? They make a Pocket Cast, I think, right? Isn't that their name? Pocket Jelly, is that their name?
Pocket Jelly, yeah.
Shifty Jelly, yeah. Sorry, no, you're right, yeah. I don't really hear much about them, but they seem to plug away and keep making great software. I wonder how their revenue breaks down because they're on iOS and Android too. But I think even I think the reality is the low-hanging fruit has been plucked. It's not necessarily the boom is over, but the traditional boom of there's a huge hole in the market, you can make an app and own that, that's pretty much over for the most part. And where the real app boom now is what you're talking about.
Right, more of an enterprise corp-to-corp.
Is that really a bad thing, though? Maybe it's not as easy, right? That's definitely true.
Well, it's I just had a conversation similar to this about 45 minutes ago. It's just a different business model, right? Is it better or worse? I mean, I don't know. Certainly, it's probably more sexy to talk about consumer-facing applications, to say, hey, I just released this, or, do the whole kind of indie thing. But the dollar amounts sloshing around aren't that great, right? I mean, let's think of an app that did really well. Overcast certainly didn't make millions, right? By anybody's imagination.
Yeah.
I would be, the Tweetbot family of apps. I can't imagine that they're making millions. And unfortunately, to be a real, one app sustainable business, that's got to be $1 million app. Unless you define a business as one guy, you work from home and you develop your app, and that is another road, right? But I would say that that's a different kind of thing. But even then, most apps make no money. Like, the vast majority of apps make absolutely no money, certainly less than 100 USD.
So the app boom is different?
Well, I think apps are no longer a separate thing, right? They are portals into services. So if you're defining an app as a packaged piece of software that someone pays for via an app store, that boom is over. I think that was a very separate time and a very separate thing. So I would say it is over.
Is this a headwind for Apple then? Because if apps become standardized and I can get essentially, which is true, I have essentially all of my apps on Android that I have on iOS or equivalents for the most part. Not absolutely everything, but it's so damn close. Then all of a sudden the platform advantage for the apps kind of goes away. They don't necessarily have an advantage with cost. Huawei and LG and the OnePlus 3, and there are some lower cost Android phones that are getting really well built. I wonder if this is going to be a series of headwinds that really starts to slow down iPhone adoption.
Well, I don't think so. I think it's a change in perspective, right? Everybody now has a smartphone, or the vast majority of people in developed markets do. So what that means is when you're thinking about your product that you want to launch, the app is a piece of it now, right? But it is not necessarily the product itself. Especially if you're targeting that B2B segment where you're almost certainly going to need a high-powered, Ionic or an Angular web app, something like that.
Right, which makes hybrid application development even more attractive.
This is kind of the bet I'm making, that apps are now just another window into line of business software.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't need to tie into anything new, right? They need to send JSON back and forth, and that's about it.
Yeah, I agree, actually. Okay, so I think then you have not been proved wrong. I concede you have not been proved wrong. Let's move forward, Mr. Dominic. Let's talk about some secret sauce here. Let's talk about DigitalOcean. This is really how any scale, if you're a large company, if you're a small independent person, if you're a small business, a medium business, you can look like one of the big fish in the pond by using DigitalOcean. With unbelievable pricing, a great infrastructure, super good management tools, it is really easy to get set up and going. Use our promo code CODERDIGITAL and get a $10 credit. You get a $10 credit. Their servers start at $5 a month. And people, so sometimes they ask, so what would I use DigitalOcean for? Anytime you want one of the following things: a bare bones server that is insanely fast, that has a crazy good internet connection, way better than anything you're going to get at your house or your home office. I'm talking like they have 40 gigabit E connections coming into the hypervisors. They run KVM for the virtualizer. They have SSDs for all of the disk I/O. So everything is optimized for speed. You can deploy a lot of different distributions, basically any distribution you want to run as a server. And you can deploy the base OS, like a minimal install, or you can do an entire application stack because they have tons of one-click applications. And the really nice thing is, even those of us who've done this for like 15 years, when I was standing up servers, it was so nothing like using DigitalOcean. I was literally standing them up. In fact, the first servers, when I started working with servers that were x86 based, well, the first servers I started working with weren't even x86 based; they were Spark based. And then, when x86 started becoming more reasonable, they were in these huge, massive towers, boxes, basically. That the motherboard was on one side, and the power supply and the disk were on another side. It was these giant boxes, and we stacked them. Hand built them. So yeah, it's changed a little bit, because now coming from somebody who literally was that hands-on with the building process, setting everything up, customizing everything, have install scripts and answer scripts for everything. Perfectly anal about how it's set up. Perfectly. Now I'm amazed when I go deploy a DigitalOcean application stack and everything's just brilliant. Everything's brilliant. It's not like they're using funky repos with software that you have to wait on DigitalOcean to update. No, they go right to the source. They make sure they got the right GPG key, so everything's verified. It's set up good, it's set up efficient, and it's set up perfectly to bounce from there and go use some of their great community documentation. So when you say, what could I use DigitalOcean for? Anything where you need a server-side component, and you want it super fast, and you want to be able to experiment it, blow it away, and rebuild, and take snapshots. And they have data centers all over the world with a great interface to match it. So use our promo code CODERDIGITAL, and a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. Thanks, guys. Use that promo code CODERDIGITAL. Keeps us going. Okay, so last week, as we were wrapping up, we started the topic of machine learning. And we wanted to cut it there because we realized we could spend a whole show on this, and you had to go to a meeting, as is often the case. So
Yes.
why don't we pick that ball back up? And there was this really interesting tweet that Rikai sent me, and it's using machine learning to anticipate future concepts before they begin. And when I first read that, I was like, "What? Trying to predict human behavior before we do it." And you'll have to forgive the video a little bit, but I want to play it and I'll read it because it's not voiced, but they do have a great yeah, right. So here's what they do. It's kind of interesting. They took action prediction algorithms. They developed a new method using deep learning to anticipate human interactions in the immediate future. Given a still frame, the method predicts how people interact with each other 1 second later. It predicts a handshake. The computer learns by watching hundreds of hours of raw video. Then it's able to predict a kiss before a kiss happens, and they give you an example here. That's from Big Bang. They predict a handshake to conclude a meeting before the handshake happens. There's the handshake, it does happen. So the computer is able to analyze these behaviors. It predicts a hug here, and these people do end up hugging. It's able to kind of, by just watching, data that's already out there. Now it tries to predict a handshake here, but instead, it was an awkward white man high five, and so it actually predicted that wrong. It predicted a handshake. Instead, it was awkward high five. The idea, though, is taking lots and lots of data and asking, the machine to process it. In fact, why don't we use a little machine learning right now? Okay, Google, define machine learning.
According to Wattis.com, TechTarget, machine learning is a type of artificial intelligence that provides computers with the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed.
Whoa, that's a pretty interesting. And you know what's interesting about that definition? Not the definition it gave me before we started the show. I did that. I asked that same question an hour before we started the show, and that was not.
See, in the time between when you first asked and now, it learned the correct answer.
That is really interesting because the other answer it gave me. Here's the other answer. I did actually save it. Where is it though? Boy, because that one is so much better. I tried to bookmark it. Machine learning is a subfield of computer science that evolved from the study of pattern recognition and computational learning theory in artificial intelligence. In 1959, and it basically read a Wikipedia. That's interesting. A very interesting little experiment there. So, what do you think about machine learning, and how does it fit in with bots and what Microsoft's talking about? And then in a little bit, I figured we'd talk a little bit about differential privacy because I grabbed that clip from the talk show where Craig Federighi talks about it.
Yeah. So, to me, these are all ingredients in the same cocktail, right? Where, except for differential privacy, which I think is a kind of different approach, but let's table that one for now. Bots are all about an interface, right? The interface being right now kind of command line slacky, but really in the future it's going to be verbal. So, computer, what happened? That kind of thing. Machine learning is more, I hate to play buzzword bingo, but using big data in quotes to you do predictive analysis, more near quotes, and figure out what exactly the machine needs to do. But it's the heart of it is the software continually improves itself, right? And that's why I made that crack about did Siri learn it between now, or did Google learn it between when you first asked them and now? The reason I say that is that kind of is what's supposed to happen, right? Like think about the I forgot the AlphaGo, right?
Oh yeah.
Are you familiar with that?
Yep.
Same idea, right? Even back in the day, Deep Blue was kind of different because it just brute forced through a bunch. But that is part of this, right? Brute forcing through a bunch of data and using that kind of data analysis to, improve the software. And when I mean brute forcing, I mean literally the software is brute forcing through itself. The question, so there's a lot of questions. One, you asked about the relationship to each other. I would argue that the bot is kind of like some sort of weird CLI or agent between you the user, and the machine learning / AI / big data service on the back end, right? And again, there's this cocktail. There's natural language processing if you're doing verbal. I have some questions about how is this stuff supposed to work between regionalities and nationalities. You know,
Yeah, that's interesting.
yeah, because things don't exactly flow the same way in different languages, right? Or even in different regions of the same country, particularly the United States is a good example of that. Also, your machine learned Skype is terrible right now.
I know. I'm sorry about
Kinda-
that. We are working
that's
on
okay.
it.
Okay.
We could patreon.com/today. We are basically probably just going to sign up for another ISP. The only issue is we just really we already pay a significant amount in data per month just to run the network and to provide the connections that we need at the office and links to another office, and so it's already very expensive. So we haven't upgraded it yet, but we're in progress. I just have to figure out what's best because we have very limited options.
Whereas, I mean,
I may
know where
also, you know what I might, you know what, I'm not even joking. Sorry to derail the conversation, but it's all the chat room's talking about, so we might as well just address it.
Right.
I'm seriously considered just going. It's been so problematic recently, and I think it's a core issue at Comcast down in their Bellevue area. I am really tempted to just go on a road trip and just do the shows from the road for a few weeks until they get it fixed. Because
That's amazing.
it's so annoying. Anyways, going back onto the topic of machine learning, the clip that was in the talk show actually I think discusses it a little bit too. So we could transition to that if you want to.
Yeah, let me just for some of our audience who maybe hasn't heard the term before, because it just occurred to me while you were talking. A good real world example of like machine learning in action is actually Amazon's recommendations, right? They have a giant database of data, and they're continuously learning the machine,
It's not that
right?
good though.
Really, it's actually pretty good for me.
Is it? Yeah, I never find it. I find it often. Yeah. I
Okay.
find what it's better at is suggesting stuff to me that's in my wish list or something like that. Like treat yourself. I'm like, oh,
See, I don't use the wish list at all, so that maybe that's why. Okay.
yeah. I don't know. Yeah, because you could make the same argument for Netflix, and I don't think that's a particularly great one either. And I know they work a lot on that. Netflix is really one of the early pioneers in this area. Remember when they had $1 million bounty to help make it better?
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, that was a long time ago now, wasn't it? So at WWDC, they announced something called differential privacy in iOS 10 that is going to help people participate in machine learning anonymously. And differential privacy, it's funny, when I started looking into it, do you know who I found? Boy, excuse me. I've been drinking a coffee, and I hope the audience will forgive me because I know we have some serious coffee enthusiasts out there. But I was just out on a breakfast run before the show to wake myself up a little bit, and I got some Starbucks, and it's got like
Burn the heathen.
I know I guess they bought Tivana.
Skype already did it.
They bought Tivana.
Listening.
What? No, I'm listening to you. I hear you,
I
baby.
don't even know if we just lost him or both of us.
No, I hear you, baby. It's okay. It's okay. You simmer down over there. You see, hey, you simmer down. Let Skype work itself out. The Skype will work itself out. It'll be good. So they bought Tivana, and Tivana, they say, our cup of tea, and it's not bad. It's iced coffee with vanilla bean in there. So, anyways, what I was saying before, boy, this show is really this is going from what was going to be a great show to just totally off the rails now. What I was saying was when I did research on differential privacy, I thought it was going to be something Apple made up. Like they just were calling it, and I was like, that's not a good name at all. But it turns out Microsoft predominantly has done a ton of research on differential privacy, and they're one of the big companies behind it. I don't know if they actually have used it in production. And one of the other things that I don't think was very clear from WWDC, but Apple has made it clear that differential privacy is going to be opt-in, and they claim you won't have to opt into it to receive the benefits, the intelligence in the OS itself that they're grokking from other people. So this differential privacy, they claim, is their big trick to doing mass data collection, machine learning, and improving their OS without having to collect all your personal data. And I don't really think I should say much more because this interview right here from the talk show, which was a great talk show, John Gruber did this at WWDC, and gets in. If the reason why it's good is they actually have technical discussions and they answer questions, and he asked good questions. So you actually they talk about the Apple file system, and he reveals how that's probably going to make updates way better. He talks about that. He talks about multi-user accounts in iOS being enabled by the new Apple file. There's interesting things in there, and so they get into the topic of differential privacy here, and it's like a 2-minute clip, and I think it's really relevant.
I want to.
So this is so asking the question for those of you that aren't familiar is John Groover. He's talking to Craig Federighi and Phil Schiller, on the stage at a WWDC event.
I want to get nerdy on this differential privacy thing.
Yeah.
Because it's a phrase. It's like an official thing. I've learned a little more. It's not just a phrase you guys made up. It's like
It wouldn't have been the phrase we would have made up.
Right.
We would have done a better name if that's what we did.
But like in the State of the Union yesterday, I mean, there's real math behind it. This is not just a name that is applied to policies. This is
That's
like
correct.
a branch of statistical analysis.
Yes.
Talk to me about it. Give me a little. I know you touched about it in the keynote, but give us like a little slightly juicier layman's overview of differential privacy.
So Craig's going to do a really good job of explaining here, Mike. But take a listen, and then let's at the other end of his explanation, let's talk about it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, of course, the idea is that if we wanted to know what word, a new word that everyone was, that lots of people were typing that we didn't know, so that we would stop marking it as a spelling error, or maybe we'd even suggest it on the keyboard.
Like men or something.
Yeah, like now that it's trending, it's hot. We want all our customers to be able to know that word. But we don't want to know that you and Phil are, in particular, are typing it. We want to have no way to have any knowledge of that. You can imagine if what we're essentially assembling is a picture of little pieces of data, of the forest, but all we're getting is a little piece. And when we get that little piece, even each device will statistically, much of the time, even lie about its little piece, right? But those lies will all cancel out with enough data. And the picture will suddenly resolve, will with enough data points, will resolve itself.
So what do you think of that? So the idea here is you opt into the system. The data is not linked to you, and even when you are submitting data, sometimes your phone lies. Is this for real, or is this a pipe dream?
I don't
compare it to Google, right? I mean, compare it to what Google gets.
I mean, the Google thing makes a lot more sense to me because, in a way, it's a simpler system. We have and track all of your data. We are mining that data. We are doing analysis on that data. Therefore, we can, make inferences about you. And in the case of spelling errors, figure out what things aren't spelling. I don't know. To me, the whole spelling error case is a weird example. I get what Apple's trying to do. They want to give you some of that functionality that Google can offer you, but somehow say that they're keeping your data private. One other interesting aspect of this is they do claim that a lot of this work is happening on your device, where in the Google implementation of their AI system and machine learning system, it's all very unashamedly on Google servers.
Right, but they can iterate there faster, they can expand with it, and as long as they have the data, they can always do more.
From a purely, I'm designing a system to do a thing, the Google approach seems like it makes a lot more sense. Having said that, certainly if Apple can get, as good results and not violate my privacy in such a terrible way, that might be attractive.
So the Google premise is in exchange for us being able to analyze your data. So in my case, they analyze all my photos. When I use Hangouts for calls or when I use Hangouts on LAS, they're recording that, and I'm assuming they use that for voice recognition too, I would imagine. Google Voice, obviously, they do voice recognition there. I use OK Google constantly. I just activated it. Sorry, did not mean to activate it.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Continuously over a period of time.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. 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 So I'm always using that, and I know they store all my voice samples for that. You can actually play them back in your dashboard. So the idea is they're learning more because they have my data, but they actually, I think they might address this in the clip. So I'll play a little more.
And literally, if we were trying to learn a word, we would send one bit. We'd send a position and we'd hash the word. We'd send a single bit from the hash. We'd say at position 23, Phil saw a 1. But Phil's phone would flip a coin and actually say, I'm going to lie about it. I'm going to say 0 even though I saw a 1. And that's the data that goes to Apple. Then Apple, with enough of that data, can build a composite picture and say, holy smokes, we got a word here.
All right, so now, just stop there. So what they're saying is, now I understand what he's saying. The lying is a feature, not a bug.
Right.
So it's lying to protect your, Chris Fisher's, individual upload.
Right. Yes.
So they don't know what data from you is bullshit or what data from you is correct.
Right.
I can't imagine Google's doing that. It doesn't.
No, of
sound
course
like
not. No, I think Google would argue that. No, of course no. They're reading my inbox. They're reminding me about my healthcare bill I have to pay in Google Now.
So what Apple's effectively saying here, if I understand Federici, is we have added this layer of privacy protection by doing the actual sum of the data calculation on the device, and apparently doing a 50-50 algo that just says, yes, we're sending you real data. No, I'm going to send you bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. But again, the thing I'm going to care about at the end of this is which system is better, right?
So I want to challenge one of our concepts in this conversation, and I think I want to wait though, because I want to finish your idea on this aspect of it, because I think the core thing here is big questions I have, like how can you really do data learning on a phone and on an iPad if you really want to analyze these things? It just seems like to evolve that at all, you'd have to push out a software update to every single one of your devices, and the machines that don't update to the new OS are not going to be as capable, and they're not going to contribute as much to your machine learning. Whereas if you do it all server side, you constantly can update and iterate on that and reuse the data and learn more all the time.
So you have a couple points in there. I think first of all, it's Apple. Everybody updates their stuff.
Well, that does happen a lot, and they are taking some of it to the cloud, obviously.
Second of all, I think it's interesting that he said it just takes the bit and sends the bit up. So I don't think they're obviously not actually sending the word man, right, using his example.
They must be asking to learn a certain thing, and then it's sending yes,
they're
no
sending
bits.
it as some other data format straight up. So what it sounds like, and again, people who care about this a lot more than I will read into it and find out. It sounds like they just send when they lie, using his word, right? When the phone lies, it says random data. So it's not, if the word is man, it doesn't think, okay, let me send woman, right? No, it just says or if the color is blue, it doesn't send red. It sends garbage data.
Maybe.
So that's how they can tell the garbage data from the good data, because the garbage data is so out of place. Using his forest analogy, the garbage data looks like a desert, right? I mean, these are all radical oversimplifications, and all the nerd ragers can send me long emails saying what I missed, but that's fine.
Yeah, I think the anime says this is perfect. It says the differential privacy adds random noise, so it raises the noise floor, right? But you still can see the peaks and raising out where actual trends occur in aggregate.
To Apple's credit, they are actually taking on the cost and the just general pain in the assness of having to filter out the noise on the back end in an effort, God knows how successful it will actually be, to protect user privacy.
So I want to play a little more of the clip, because this gets into the part of the different styles of machine learning.
Roughly are seeing it, and that's typically what you want to know. You want to know what's happening at large, but we have no desire to know what specifically who is doing
It's typically what you would want to know. It's not typically what other companies in the industry would want to know.
And part of the reason this is so important to get into is because, there's the theory that, well, we can just anonymize the data and send it up and then all's good. And it's a bunch of crap, because I can send all this data and say, hey, I don't know who you are, but I happen to know that same location you go to every night. I happen to know the same place you go to work every day. I've got all this data. I just don't know your name or your ID. Boy, it's really hard to reverse engineer that anonymous data, right? So what you need to do is create a system that goes beyond anonymizing to really make it impossible to reconfigure who that user is.
So
Not a hard crowd to play to there.
So the way I have it written down here is that if it works as you're describing it, it means it's not just that Apple doesn't use that information to reverse the anonymity, it's that mathematically you can't.
We can't.
Right. It's the design of the system is such that it's not even possible if
that's a big commitment he's getting them to make.
A few years and maybe
which is important if they get a federal subpoena.
Poke around.
Right.
Well, companies change. I mean, that is
no. I mean, that's absolutely true. And the point of view. I mean, honestly, the point of view that someone says, "Hey, I know we know a ton about you."
This is the thing, actually, that after I read Into the Plex, a book about Google, this was my major concern about Google right now.
But don't worry, we're nice guys, and our bit, it's all good. Well, okay, maybe you're nice guys 10 years from now who's running this thing.
Right.
Or what if someone breaks into your computers? Are they nice guys?
Right.
So you just don't want to have any central source that has that kind of knowledge, because in the fullness of time, anything is possible. And so differential privacy is, there are mathematical proofs that will show that you cannot with any confidence determine anything about any of the people contributing to the data set, and we think that's important.
So that's a huge commitment for them to make publicly, and I think you're right. Their incentive is they don't want to have to provide that data to the governments either for different countries. So they can go into China and they can say we can't do this, and they can go into the U.S. and say we can't do this, and they're telling the truth. So I believe them when he says that. He's a VP and he's saying that in a public setting. So that's a huge commitment.
Carries some weight for them. So you said something as kind of a throwaway comment that you read Into the Plex, and this was your problem. Can you jump into that a little bit?
So Into the Plex, they go into some detail about some really creepy stuff that Google realized when it realized it was not a search company, but it was an advertising company. And they made this transition because, they really honestly wanted to be a search company. And they really wanted to do some creepy stuff. And I do not actually remember the details anymore, but and I actually was thinking about reading it again. What vibrantly struck out just really clear to me was the kibosh came from Larry or Sergey, and that's who stopped it. And sometimes it was what's his face? Who's the creepy guy that now is the interface with the federal government? Eric Schmidt. Eric Schmidt was really pushing for the aggressively creepy spying on people stuff, and others were too. And Larry and Sergey said, "No, we can't do that. That'll harm our brand. That's not our direction." And they personally killed the projects. And I realized, when I was reading the book, I thought, well, my God, what happens when they're not there to stop this? Because they won't work there forever. Eventually, they die, or they move on, or they retire. So what happens then? Especially if someone like Eric Schmidt's still there. That creeps me out.
Well, what happens is it's a little bit of a trust me game, right? If you trust Google, good. If you don't, then you should consider,
Well, companies change, though. Look at Apple with Steve Jobs, without Steve Jobs, both in the 80s and 90s and now.
No, that's a fair criticism. So let me ask you this then. You have a choice. Assuming you want to use this technology, does the differential privacy model put forth by Apple?
Maybe. Here's the other thing they said in the talk show, which is linked in the show notes if you guys want to hear the whole interview. Here's the other thing that Gruber asked him. He said, okay, so let's talk about photos. And Gruber basically says, how are you guys going to do photos as good as Google when Google's sucking up everybody's data and looking at everybody's photos? And I thought Craig's answer was really obvious, and I don't know why it's never crossed my mind. He says, well, it turns out when you need to teach the computer about mountains, you don't have to spy on everybody's data to do that. You can just go get pictures of mountains and feed it pictures of mountains. And it's something like, 22,000 different objects they're going to recognize in a picture, and they went out and they got the data. They went out and bought data sets. There are data sets out there you can buy to plug into this to train it. And that's what they did. And he's like, you don't have to use everyone's information to train the machines. And now we'll see how good it is, but that seemed like a super, super obvious statement. So what they're doing on device is going to be like the facial recognition and the labeling and the categorizing. But, on the iCloud, they're doing this is what a mountain looks like, this is what a baby looks like, this is what a hug looks like. They're training that using supplied data sets. Now, that seems like a super obvious, so I was like, man, Google Photos is so great, and the only reason it must be that good, see, I'm buying into the line. The only reason it must be that good is because, well, they can analyze all the user's data and recognize stuff. It never even crossed my mind that there's probably a dozen other ways to solve that problem. So that was when I realized maybe Google is taking way more information than they need. They know exactly how much my my healthcare bill is.
Wait. Isn't it obvious that Google is taking more information than they need? To be fair, right? Setting up the straw man argument of, Google's only doing absolutely the minimum data that they need to provide you these services was always not true, and they don't even claim that, right? If we were to get a Google rep on the phone, I'm sure he or she would say, listen, much more softly and eloquently than I'm about to. Listen, you are our product. You're cattle, right? We don't want to abuse you. We don't want to hurt you, but we definitely need to be able to milk you for our juicy, juicy data milk.
Mm-hmm.
So, setting up the fallacy that Google only ever promised to take the minimum, I think is not fair. Because, 6-7 years ago when you started using Gmail, that was never true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Or Docs.
Or Docs, although I have to say I've gotten some pretty scary advertisements thanks to Google for Work. So that there is a creepiness factor of I almost wonder, should they not be looking at the corporate accounts?
I thought that was a thing.
It doesn't seem to be. I mean,
Jeez, that is creepy.
I can't prove it, but it's I'll send an email to my attorney and then I'll get an advertisement for another attorney. Which my understanding is because it's under the Google for Work umbrella, they should not be using that as a data mining point.
I tell you what, either differential privacy, on-device learning, buying data sets to train, they have so much ground to make up for right now. Apparently, my phone is randomly requesting to pair with the machine over here. That's really
I think you should let it.
I think they have so much ground to catch up on that there's no way the first few... It's gonna be like Maps. It's gonna be like Maps.
Okay, but Maps is pretty good now. I'm just saying.
It is. You know what? Actually, it is not bad. It is not bad. You're right. It's gotten better, and it looks like it's gonna be way better in iOS 10 because they're gonna let pretty much anybody lay their own data.
Yeah.
Over that. Hey, before we go any further, actually, I got a couple of really cool bits of feedback. I want to talk about Linux Academy. Could you go to linuxacademy.com/coders for me? Support the show and learn more about Linux Academy, a great platform with a brand new website, a great platform to learn more about the technology around Linux.
Whether you're an experienced sysadmin or new to the world of Linux, Azure, and AWS, OpenStack, and DevOps, a sharp skill set is an absolute necessity to...
They're going all in on Azure because did you hear Microsoft's announcement that 1 in 3 servers on Azure now runs Linux? It's growing like crazy over there.
I know, and I heard Ballmer scream all the way from Seattle.
And so they got the new website with the video.
Succeed. Meet Linux Academy, an online Linux and cloud training platform that uses self-paced video courses and hands-on labs to give you real-world experience for a wide range of skills.
That's my line. That's my line.
Train for your certification, learn the latest DevOps tools, and grow your skill set to do better work.
It's actually really awesome. It's got a great community because it's stacked full of Jupiter Broadcasting members, learning plans where you can set a time frame and it sticks to your schedule and your learning goals, learning paths, which are a series of courses and content planned by their instructors. Yes, they have instructor mentoring available. You get certifications of completion, assignments that help you do deep dives and perform particular tasks on the server. I love the way they spin up the labs when you need them. You SSH right in. They have iOS and Android apps and more. Depending on no time, a lot of time, they've got courseware for you. It's pretty cool. linuxacademy.com/coders. Go check them out and learn more. All right, Mr. Dominic. So really quickly, just to sort of celebrate the fact that you got yourself a new rig, I want to thank Chaotic Linux for submitting the Ruby on Rails development on Ubuntu 16.04 guide. This is your guide to get totally set up on Ubuntu 16.04 with Ruby on Rails, which I know you'll be jumping right on. So I thought I'd link that in the show notes to kick off our conversation about the new rig. Do you want to tell me about it? Listen, I'm not going to be here next week.
Yeah.
And I didn't really get a chance to talk to you about it on Twitter, so I want to know what's going on.
There he goes.
Oh, come on. No, I refuse to lose you. Mr. Dominic, I will not lose you.
Well, I'm just going to assume he's gone.
No, I will not lose you. No.
He's a jackass.
Oh. Yeah, I'm trying to load Twitter, too. I can't get Twitter. This is why I'm going to go podcast in an RV right here. You see, you all think I'm crazy, but that might be the savior right there. I'm going to go podcast in an RV. I'll call it Mr. Dominic from the road. I'll be driving down. Well, I won't be driving. I'll be going down the freeway, and I'll have better connectivity than I do on this Comcast business line.
You have to fix this.
I know,
This
right?
is terrible.
I know.
All right,
I know.
So the machine. So the reason for the machine is pretty simple. The MacBook Pro keeps kernel panicking.
Yeah.
I have one of those cooling things. I'm doing all kinds of crazy stuff to keep it alive, and it's not working. Apple failed to release a new MacBook Pro this year, so I did not get one. I instead decided to buy a workstation for my desk at my office. It is a Dell Inspiron 3650.
Woo!
The reason I bought that specific computer is that ours had a $200 off coupon.
Really? That's great.
The price ended up being $579. 16 gigs of RAM. Now this is where I'm a little scared. It's an i7, but the graphics card is an AMD Radeon R9 360.
That could give you some issues, depending. Sorry, say again. What's the model?
Radeon HD R9 360.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one, so I don't know. But there are some models that are a little trickier to get working than others. But is it on a card? Yeah. It's on a card, right? So worst case scenario, you could Newegg yourself an NVIDIA one.
It's a card. I've read some stuff where it was fine on 1510 and crap on 1604. So I will make a 1510 boot device if I need one.
Yeah. So you're gonna run Ubuntu on there?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be Ubuntu. 2 terabyte, 720. So I didn't go for the SSD because the deal with the coupon was you had to buy it as is. So you had to buy one of the inventory ones. That's why they gave the coupon. Otherwise, I would have done an NVIDIA card. But that's it. I mean, it's a desktop.
So you basically got $1,000 rig for half off.
Basically, that's the only reason I did it.
That'll be a good, steady workhorse, I think. That's nice, man. Good for you. And Mr. Colonel Linux will be here next week to help you get it set up.
I'm assuming I'm gonna go to meeting him on my iPad, and it'll be tech support. That is my expectation for Monday.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly it. Yeah, I would expect so. So I saw you had some back and forth with Jed and others on the Twitter. Did everybody say you did okay? And on the subreddit, what did people think?
Price is good. A lot of concern about that AMD card, though.
Yeah, that would be my concern too. But I don't think that's going to be the end of the world. I don't think that's going to be. That's not going to. I don't think that's going to really. I don't even think that's going to be much of a hitch.
So there is a proprietary beta driver for 1604 from AMD. I did find that online. It looked. I'm not sure. See, this is where I'm. I haven't had to fiddle with a Linux machine that didn't work since the Dell XPS, which I just gave up on. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know how bad is, right? Because in the 9-10 days, if something didn't work, it simply didn't work. This is not a laptop, so my expectation is that I shouldn't have to worry. Like, I'm not going to worry about hibernation, right? I'm not worried. I'm not doing a dual monitor setup with it. So I think it should. I guess to be really blunt, my expectation is it should more or less work out of the box.
As somebody who still continues to use the hell out of Ubuntu on the server, deployed it for clients. I mean, I made a mad dash to Ubuntu server LTS when it started coming out from CentOS. It was great. Converted lots of machines. Ran Ubuntu for years. Was a massive, massive fan of it. I have never been less excited about somebody switching to Linux than when they say they're switching to Ubuntu, because it really feels like, and I know it's just for work, I know it's a good choice, and I know there's lots of good reasons to run it, but I want you, when you go into it, I want you to know that there is a better experience out there. There is a more modern Linux out there that is, packages are handled easier, driver issues are handled easier, swapping things in and out is handled easier, running better alternative desktops is much easier, doesn't trash your system. Lots of little things, for the example, like just to be honest with you, the whole idea of releases is exhausting. Like I don't.
See, a rolling release sounds super unstable to me. Though,
yeah, sure. I mean, there's lots of ways to do it, but the whole idea, like you want to in 6 months or a year or 3, you're gonna upgrade. That's like taking my most prized workhorse, and then once every 6 months to 2 years, like it could be completely decimated, and then I have nothing, and it feels like that is such a risk. Like I over the weekend.
All right, so LTS. What makes you think I'm not just going to stick with the LTS for 5 years or for the lifetime of the machine, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess if you but that would never work for me. Because eventually there's your core birds, your Chromes, your things that just like all of a sudden you're not able to install anymore. You're like, oh, yeah, if I was on a Mac, I wouldn't have this problem. And so then really you want to avoid that temptation. Anyways, you'll see what I'm talking about. But
we'll see. I mean, my biggest concern is really how weird 1604 is with graphics drivers. I've already been bitten by it once, We'll see.
Yeah, I think you'll be okay because you got bit by an Intel graphics problem.
Yeah, I'm not. My expectations are. See, I'm getting some crap in Slack right now. You bought a PC, not a Mac. Yes, the Mac. They haven't been updated in 3 years.
You can't. You just
right.
You
I mean, it's been 3 years.
Go look at the Mac Rumors Buyer's Guide and then justify buying a Mac Pro.
Oh, and then the Mac would have been $2,000. It's
Well, there's that. But if you legitimately only buy the computer once every 4 or 5 years, if that's true, which is not true for me, then the value proposition is a little better. If you buy a computer every year or so, the value is not there, and that's definitely the camp I fall into. But like, if you just I know you're probably familiar with the buyer's guide on Mac Rumors.
Oh, I am. It's sad.
And if you look at you would be getting a MacBook Pro, right?
Yeah, so I would have gone for a higher-end MacBook Pro.
Yeah, so the MacBook Pro has not been updated for 1,477 days. Think about all of the hardware changes and developments that have come out in 1,477 days. The average replacement cycle is 261 days, so just under a year. But this one is 1,477 days. The last update was in June of 2012.
I mean, the only thing I did consider as an alternative and didn't do it was buying an iMac. And the thing that got me there was cost. Like pure, these things are expensive. Cost.
The iMac, being one of their most recently updated models, was updated 258 days ago.
Well, there's that too. I mean, it's I don't love the annual release cycle from Apple because if you happen to need to replace your system at the wrong time.
Yeah, and it seems like there's room for improvement in the Intel cycle because they have the tick-tock and anyways, it does help with the value of the machines long term though. So there's that. My point being, I think you actually made a good purchase price wise. I actually think the problems that I have are actually really kind of getting resolved. I don't know if you followed like the Snap package stuff, but
I've been looking at it.
That's Canonical's horse. And there's, for example, once you get Ubuntu 16.04 installed, if you want a desktop Telegram, there is now just a Snap package where you can just go download and install it, and you're good to go.
Well, I have this dream, too, of like our build process not being on my laptop. And, using like Ionic's packaging and platform service or some other cloud build infrastructure. Just so it's, right now my laptop is the build machine, which is not good for a whole variety of reasons.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm hoping that the difference in my local dev machine, one, anything back-end or webby we do is on Ubuntu.
Right.
And it's second, really, I'm trying to get away from the native Swift Objective-C stuff. Really, really, really trying to focus down on Ionic and some Android. All of that stuff does easily support remote building, right? And in fact, the biggest hiccup in the tool chain is going to be code signing for iOS. Ionic does have a tool that does it, but it's very sort of not intuitive. The reason it's not intuitive is you still have to generate the keys on your machine and upload them, right? It's not a point the build at this and then we build it for you.
Well, I'd be actually really curious when I get back to hear how that went.
I likely will have returned it and bought a MacBook, a gold MacBook one.
You could also play with Snapcraft if you want to see what it's like to build Snap packages, so you can get an idea of where that's going on the Linux desktop.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the guy banging the native applications are dead drum, so
yeah, that's true. Just wrap it all up as an Electron app. Good to go. I'm getting a lot of Electron apps on the Linux desktop these days, and I'm not, for me. I actually realized I have a line. I prefer just a nice, simple, clean, quick desktop app. But if it's functionality that if I didn't have a desktop app for, I would do in the tab of my web browser, then I'm okay using an Electron app. That's my line. And it works really well for me. I think it's reasonable because I get a lot of gripe from the Linux Action Show audience about using Electron apps when I recommend them. So I've come with a new balance where if it's something I would have done in my web browser and now I have a standalone application to manage that or do that for me, that's a good balance right there.
Well, I mean, Slack having the thing in your notification tray is great, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like that, and that's just an Electron app. But I kind of disagree with you. I think most things are appropriate as Electron apps, and very few things are
really
need to be native.
with all of the trade-offs, that size and speed, I mean, they really are clunkers.
There are clunkers, but they're cheaper to develop and easier for people to sign off on.
Yeah, and it makes, the other thing as a Linux user that I love is it often means that there's a Linux compatible version,
right?
Which is really delightful for me. Interesting, Mr. Dominic. Well, I hope you and Mr. Noah have a great episode next week. I may get to tune in while I'm driving down the road. You never know.
Tune in.
Yeah, depending on connectivity. So follow my adventures at Chris LAS. Mr. Dominic, where would you like to send people throughout the week?
Go to DominicM.com and Buccaneer.io.
Powerful. Also, CodaRadio.reddit.com to submit topics. If there's something you think we should have talked about, that's the place to submit it. You can also leave feedback there. Email, go over to JupiterBroadcasting.com and click the contact link. If you want to give a shout out to Mr. Noah before he gets here, he's at Colonel Linux on the Twitter. And don't forget to check out JupiterBroadcasting.com/calendar just in case the time changes or something. And you can watch it live at jblive.tv. All right. I won't see you here, but they will see you right back here next week.